Thank you all for your time and most importantly, your attention today on this lovely Tuesday. So we really appreciate you joining us for this exciting launch that we have on the top 50 technologies. So yeah, as for myself, based out of London, really enjoy what I do at Frost & Sullivan, and 19 years plus have just flown by, working with esteemed colleagues that I have on this discussion. So yeah, as I always say, ladies first. Vanna, over to you.
Thanks, Ankit. Hi, everyone. I'm Vandana. Work very closely with the TechVision division within Frost & Sullivan. I have about 15 years of industry experience, and I'm really excited to present the top 50 technologies today in our webinar.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vanna. Sudeep, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ankit. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm Sudeep Basu, based out of Research Triangle Park in North Carolina in the US. And I serve as the Global Practice Leader for Innovation Services, which is our technology advisory practice. And in a previous life, I was a computational biologist, and I had the foresight to quit early since I knew that Google AlphaFold was going to put me out of work and do it at scale and do it much better than I could. I also dabble in teaching innovation strategy and IP management at universities, and excited to be in this discussion.
Excellent. Thanks, Sudeep. And Benoit.
Yeah, hi, I'm Benoit, Consulting Director in Europe, working on trends, innovation, and technology projects. Delighted to be here to speak about top 50 technologies.
Excellent. Thank you, Benoit, and thank you all. Well, as it happens on this lovely Tuesday, what we want to take you through over the next, I guess, 50 odd minutes, because we always like to save time and give it back to you, because that's at least the least thing that we can do in that way. But what are we going through today? As you can see, with the multifaceted challenges that we face right now, and it's only, by the way, March in 2025. If you thought 2025 is going to be a long year, remember there's still 9 more months to go at least. What we wanted to share with you today are ways in which you can capitalize on some of these near-term commercial opportunities that these technologies will bring. And through the course of today, we'll focus on some of these technologies that we have across the 50 that we pick up. So why do we do it? So as we go on to the next slide, Vanna, as an organization, we have what we call as the 7 gates of transformation that we usually take organizations through. So right from what you see in linear fashion, from transformation through to companies to action, are the 7 gates that Frost & Sullivan has been extremely good at now in terms of helping the focus that you may want to have at a certain point of time. What's intriguing is the strategic imperatives that we focus on a day-to-day basis as part of that. So today we are focusing on disruptive technologies that you see in that scope over there, right, alongside with others that range from transformative megatrends to business models to convergences to, surprise, surprise, the geopolitical chaos, right, that we experience every morning that we wake up through our phones. Now, as we go deeper into it, onto the next slide, how do we think? So the 4 of us and the esteemed colleagues that we work with globally as part of the TechVision practice area focus on the technologies that are in the middle of your screen. So if TechVision was a solar system, these are the 9 planets that we have. And trends, which is on the left side of your screen, is like the gravity, which holds these technologies together. So on the trend side, as you can see, we go deeper into it from this BEATS framework, which again, Frost & Sullivan has pioneered, and it's been doing it for years now. So from a business model, economic, environmental, tech, and social perspective, these are the views we get from a trends angle. And the combination of the trends and the technologies is what then helps us to give all of you the view on which industries will these technologies impact, by when will it impact, how much will it impact, And ultimately, what do you do about it, right? In terms of your decision making frame, right? Which is, as we like to call it, the three B's: to build, to buy, or to borrow, right? And we'll keep on mentioning that as a frame of reference for you throughout today. But on nine technology clusters is where we have the expertise in house. And again, as TechVision, we have been doing it for 23 years um, within the system. So, wherein we constantly analyze. And that's what created the big data moment for us about 15 years ago, wherein we said, how do we crystallize all this and share with you our view on technologies with that near term commercial potential? So, on the next slide is where the methodology comes into picture, and we've been doing it for 15 years. So this methodology has stood the test of time, and we are all evident of that. um, but even at a global level, there's no other organization which has been doing it with that much of systematic focus as we have been. And certainly it's been a joy doing so, because the decades of focus on the technologies themselves across different entities has enabled us to go deeper into how the technology is evolving and where the eventual opportunities arise, right? So, in the third pillar is where I want to draw your attention, which is we stress test a long list of technologies each year. So, for example, in January of early this year, we had about 480 technologies that our team stress test across those 8 factors that you see, which range from intellectual property activity, funding, public and private funding, what's the future potential of the technology going to be, how many mega trends it is linked to, how many regions will it eventually be adopted, how many sectors will it go into, is the technology actually disruptive, or how's the technology evolving, right? So if you do a very quick math in your head, 4, 24, 30 plus technologies and 8 factors, right? The thousands of data points that our team sort of looks at when they come up with their view on their subjective opinion on it. And this is where I will definitely bring along the fact that our methodology is a very healthy combination of subjective and objective parameters. In an age and era wherein you can go to Perplexity and do what you want for much lower, and any LLM agent, this stands out. And again, this is just feedback we get on a daily basis. So we look at that long list, and then we arrive at the top 50 technologies with near-term commercial potential, so which is the next 2 to 3 years. But since we have been doing it 15 years, right, in the first few years, we would stop at that. But then we started getting asked questions like, we know what we know, tell us what we don't know. So, which is where a spin out of this exercise is also what is called as the Future 18, which are 2 technologies across the 9 clusters that we pick up that give you the long-term perspective, right? And those are really low TRL or low technology readiness level technologies, because for a sense of scale, right? TRL is your 1 to 9. 1 is an idea, 9 is a commercialized product. So we assess how the technology progresses through all the stages and then to arrive at that. So the 8 factors is quite critical, because what Julieta is going to bring up to you now next is going to catch your attention. Yeah, fastest fingers first, right? Which factors do you consider when evaluating tech from near-term perspective? And I'll offer the frame of reference of near-term being the next 2 to 3 years. As my esteemed panelists would agree, market potential is what we debate on the maximum amount of time, and all of you as well seems like that's the case. But even the fact that funding, megatrends, and IP are very close to each other is interesting, isn't it? Sudeep, I don't know what your first thoughts are as you see this.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think we've had this lively discussion internally as well. And this poll kind of points to that, is whether it is markets that drive technology, or do technologies drive markets? And I think
Correct.
it's pretty clear today that technologies drive markets, technologies drive geopolitics, technology drives finance, technology drives governments and government efficiency, depending on where you live. But I think overall, it's intellectual property. Honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed to see that number. I would have liked to see it higher, because especially if technology is driving markets, which is a reality today. About 90% or 85% of that value of those technology-driven markets is actually encapsulated in IP. So I would, urge the audience as well, and far and wide, those that listen to this later offline at your leisure, is to focus as much on the value of how technology drives and creates markets and how intellectual property is aligned with that. Megatrends, of course, on the future horizon can inform your decision making, can inform your strategy and roadmaps. But I would say a keener focus on markets and IP hand in glove is highly recommended in our line of work.
Okay, good thought. Vanna, any views from you on the poll results?
I think it's quite a sort of balanced focus on all the factors that we evaluate, and some of the factors that we give the highest weightage to while doing our ranking exercise is funding, IP, and market potential. And these did come up in the poll, so it's in alignment with what we do. But I'd agree with Sudeep in terms of increasing the focus on IP because it's super critical to sort of understand the IP trends and see how that drives technology innovations forward in terms of productization and commercialization at a later point. So yeah, money follows the IP.
Clearly. And Benoit, you and I know about the European situation and market potential, right? So your thoughts?
No, actually, I'm not surprised by the answer, just because given the general situation, organizations tend to look for really can make their daily decisions, and it's good to take a step back to be informed on what are the options for these decisions. Well, I'm not surprised, but that's interesting indeed.
Indeed, indeed. Well, if the last 2.5 months have shown you anything, the next 3 year plus are going to be a lot of dynamics going up and down, up and down. So let's be ready for that. So with that in mind, Vanna, over to you.
Sure, thanks, Ankit. So I'm really excited to present the top 50 technologies in the 15th edition of our research. I'd love to sort of take you all through all the 50 technologies today, but unfortunately, we don't have that time. So we'll be focusing only on 5 technologies today, and they include ferrophosphate batteries, e-fuels, advanced encapsulation, metacognitive AI, and GLP-1 RAs. And like you can see on the chart, all our technologies are distributed across the 9 technology clusters that we track on a daily basis. And we can begin our discussion today with the first technology, which is the GLP-1 receptor agonists. Now, this drug class is not a new drug class per se. They've been around for quite some time for the treatment of diabetes. But what's happened in terms of innovation is that they've been able to show unprecedented weight reduction. The sort of newest therapy that is in phase 3 treatment is Eli Lilly's retatrutide. It's a triple receptor agonist and has been able to show a weight reduction of 24%, which is comparable to the effects of bariatric surgery, which is a gold standard for weight management, which is what makes this application very exciting. It has definitely seen a lot of market potential in the past few years. Semaglutide alone was able to generate over $27 billion in the past year, and the cumulative market potential for this drug class for the next 5 years is over $400 billion. There's, of course, been a rise in demand for these drugs, so much so that between 2020 and 2023, the dispensing of GLP-1 RAs increased by over 590%. And what happened as a result of that was in 2024, there was a huge shortage of these drugs. And then large companies such as Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, expanded their manufacturing capabilities to meet the rising demand for this drug class. And as of 2025, the supply shortage challenge has been resolved successfully. What has also happened is that these drugs have gotten regulatory approvals that go way beyond metabolic health. They've been recently approved for decreasing the risk of cardiovascular disorders. They've been approved for the treatment of diabetic nephropathy, and they've also been approved for the treatment of obstructive sleep apnea. And currently, they are being explored for several other indications, including mental health concerns such as neuropsychiatric and neurodegenerative disorders that range from anxiety, depression, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. They're also being explored for applications in gut health, in women's health, especially polycystic ovary syndrome, and several other indications, which is sort of indicative of the rising potential for this drug class. What is also happening in terms of innovation is that there are new drug formulations that are being developed. Now, most of the GLP-1 RAs are once weekly injectables. However, there are companies that are exploring oral formulations of this drug, one of them being Viking Therapeutics. They're looking at a once monthly oral dosage, which gives them a significant competitive advantage from a dosing standpoint as well as a delivery standpoint, and will likely see more adoption if it gets approved and goes through the clinical trial successfully. Or what is also happening in terms of the competitive landscape is there will be emerging competitors from China, such as Innovent and PegBio. There will be Boehringer Ingelheim and Zealand Pharma's candidate that is being co-developed by both these companies. It's a dual receptor agonist with a higher affinity for GLP-1 RA receptor as compared to the GCCR receptor. And what this means in terms of physiology is that their drug class will be able to reduce the nausea and the vomiting that's often experienced with this drug class, and will make it a better candidate when compared to alt-immune similar drug candidates, right? So it is a highly sort of competitive market. Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly will continue to dominate this landscape. However, there will be new innovators that will come up with newer drug formulations and newer drug combinations to treat metabolic health as well as several other indications outside of metabolic health, which makes this sector extremely exciting and disruptive in the next few years. So that's about GLP-1 RAs. Over to you, Benoit, to talk a little bit more about advanced encapsulation.
Yes, so advanced encapsulation with the principle being to entrap an active molecule into carrier material with the aim to improve efficiency of the product itself through availability or targeted goals. This is already used in food and beverage, personal care, and pharmaceuticals, but we are seeing increasing research being done for other applications in materials, electronics, and others. Here, what we want to highlight is that the R&D funding is focusing on application of these techniques, which is to be noted, and some examples are to be noted, especially in pharmaceutical, food, and fragrance products. Because I didn't mention that, but can be used also to improve taste and flavor, for example, activity of a given molecule. You note here that the IP activity is strong with an impressive number of patents registered in the recent years. There are several fields to be noted, reactive materials, but mostly nanotechnology that enables strong advancements in encapsulation technology through nano encapsulation is really something to be noted. The market potential, again, driven by these developments and potential application offered by nanotechnology in the coming future, is interesting. Highlighting one use case, kind of representative of the overall innovation brought into the market. BASF launched a new ingredient, which is a solid lipid nanoparticle that protect retinol and its action, and in that with the goal to improve its efficacy overall. We see two regions leading the way, North America and Europe. They are really active in developing these solutions. Several industry to be highlighted: agrochemical, pharmaceutical encapsulations, and also personal care as a whole as strong area of opportunity. Speaking of which, market potential, again, these techniques needs to be considered for the application mentioned, FMCG, pharmaceutical industries. I wanted to highlight also the different mega trends that are supporting these technology move or technology dynamic, I would say. Of course, climate technology, but also AI governance platform, which can bring also a new way of designing products there, which might again improve the number of potential application for this technology. So maybe we can move to the next technology we wanted to highlight. Yeah, synthetic fuels. So basically fuels from green electricity, capture CO2 or material, greenhouse gas, and water in order to be an alternative to conventional fuels. So we see directly the interest from sustainability, but potentially also as an alternative for sourcing fuels in a geopolitical context that is challenged. Important funding supported strongly by government and subsidies in that case. So we considered in funding public and private, but the driver here seems to be more public, though followed by private players in that domain. You see a much lower IP activity if you compare to the previous technology, though it's still interesting to see that China is leading the way in that domain, innovating for these e-fuels. Strong market potential. We give a range here because there is several factors that we don't master. Changing oil prices, for example, though market potential opportunity is definitely to be expected there. Several use cases, but we highlight here the US-based carbon transformation company 12 that secures some funding in order to develop its fuels with scaling, which is of course a challenge for a list of players in that matter, and we wanted to highlight that. Europe with a Green Deal and other sustainable policies leading the way in that domain. We can mention SAF as a potential application to be followed in priority. So yeah, as an opportunity, ability to scale up this technology into commercial production will be something worth it to capture in the coming weeks, months, or years. Yeah, Sudeep, over to you.
Merci beaucoup, Benoit. And I'm going to jump into a really exciting area, which is metacognitive AI, and quite a mouthful at that. Um, I don't want to call it meta AI to give you the wrong impression, lest we are, looked at as being with favorites. But before I jump into what metacognitive AI is, I would be curious if I had a poll to run to say how many of you read the book Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom, and is a professor at Oxford. And I read his book Superintelligence, I would say about 4 or 5 years ago. Um, and I was really struggling to deal with the fact that we would have AGI, which far exceeds human capabilities. And now I think I am more accepting of the fact that we will have it. And actually, metacognitive AI is sort of on that path, on that route. And what it really is it's a key step towards AGI, and it enables the AI algorithms learning and improvement and sort of almost self-analysis and self-thinking with or without human intervention. And certainly this boosts accuracy and efficiency, but it also makes it more transparent, right? More relatable in some ways. Those are all key aspects of, you know, having reliable AI. Um, the applications are myriad, but in terms of the funding, I would say that what we are showing you here is probably on the lower end of the spectrum. IP activity for software and algorithms is not a great benchmark, so I would say take that with a pinch of salt, because a lot of countries don't even recognize software patents, right? So the 230 plus patents that you see with the US leading can also give you an idea about the patent regimes and the countries you're filing in, where the innovation is originating, et cetera. As of now, I would say that the US is still leading in the game. Though, as we've seen, there can be curveballs and surprises that are thrown at us. The market potential is definitely high. And for AI, the challenge is that, I mean, you sort of think of a market potential, and then it looks to be a tenth of what it can really be. And like Ankit, often says that the rate of change of technology is so rapid, especially with AI, that by the time you look at a number, that's yesterday's number or a number from a week ago. And especially in AI, that's true. What really excites me about metacognition or metacognitive AI is not it's the architecture itself, where you've got these different layers, and a tremendous amount of work done on this by two of our colleagues, Hina and Samyadeep. Kudos to them for really diving deep into this. And that's the exciting thing about our global team. As you can see, we're represented, widely across. Got Oxford, Paris, India, US, of course, Japan, South Korea, China, Australia, New Zealand, Latin America, and of course, our offices in North America and our friendly neighbor, Canada, in Toronto, and Africa and continent as well in South Africa. So our global representation of the team also looks at some of these differences and how technologies are being adopted and viewed and applied, and also in terms of the regimen of implementing them from the size of when you look at the Patent Cooperation Treaty or the WIPO perspective of the world of 180 plus countries, and how that is seen and how that impacts global markets, right? But for me, some of the key applications, of course, in healthcare, we've looked at it. We've looked at it in cybersecurity. And in my discussions with Soumyadeep, that has sort of come out as a core area. Banking and financial services. But I also want to call out unique applications in areas like manufacturing, let's say, right? And these days, we hear a lot about the Biosecure Act in the US, where you're not going to source from one country versus the other. You need systems to be more efficient. And metacognitive AI can help with that. For example, in reducing batch failures or in implementing continuous manufacturing. The digital transformation level of a pharmaceutical or a biopharmaceutical manufacturing plant can have process design such that you can implement metacognitive AI on it. And if you have more anonymized data, and I'm hoping that the FDA looks into this more deeply, especially now that Elon Musk is so closely involved with a lot of the things at the government level. I really hope technology penetration, technology adoption, and AI adoption, including metacognitive AI adoption, at least here at home in the US, improves. And I hope it happens in the rest of the world too, because AI is a field where there's going to be dominance very quickly of about 5 or 6 differentiated global leaders. Now, I urge you to start thinking about this at your company level, not just to say, what can I do technologically with AI or operationally with AI, but how can AI really transform every process, including how we think about innovation and innovative products, and everything else that includes training and education, and of course, society at large, which is a much larger question. But I think you've got to start really deeply looking at what you can do. Are you going to run an AI hackathon? And if that's something you want to bounce ideas off us, I think we'd be happy to talk to you about that. And that's something I've actually had the good fortune of witnessing at Duke University, and recently with Scotty Shaw, we've partnered at Frost & Sullivan to help support an AI hackathon at the IB Plus, which is Harvard, Duke, and another university of AI in Mumbai. So you can see how the global development of AI is happening in parallel across geographies. And we're keeping a really, really close pulse on this. So with that, I want to pass it over to Ankit to take this forward. But if you get me started on this, I don't know when to stop. That's my problem.
Excellent. So Dave, clearly your passion for metacognitive AI is evident, and rightly so, right? Because of the excitement that's around it and the potential it holds in terms of the impact it brings, right? Now, if I pause and ask all of you to think what you have been through as a journey over the last 30 minutes or so, right? So we went from how we look at trends, technologies, and industries, why we do the top 50 technology exercise, and then how is it that's going to help in your decision making, right? To build, to buy, or to borrow. We have gone from looking at even deeply at the 4 technologies that we think have those great opportunities, right? Giving a healthcare perspective, giving a material perspective, giving an energy perspective, and a ICT perspective, right? So we have covered those. But a presentation these days or an outlook without batteries is incomplete. So as you can clearly see over here, within ferrophosphate batteries is what our team believes the next opportunity lies. Because for a lack of better word, they have said it will revolutionize the electrochemical energy storage industry. So 5 years from now, in 2030, 11th of March, if you're dialing in and if you're listening to an outlook like this, hopefully the word revolutionize would have made sense by then. Um, but the data and the foresight that they have shared with us truly points in that direction, right? If you look at the funding level, and if you look at the funding levels that we have seen in other technologies prior to this, right? It's pretty huge. 12.5 billion over the last 2 years of public and private money has flown into this. IP activity is fairly decent. It's at least in sort of 4,600 or so as we see, which reminds me of a very interesting way at which I have started looking at the top 50 selection that comes out eventually, which is the ratio of how's the funding and the IP and the market potential balance is critical. You follow the money, you follow the IP activity, and it starts to give you a decent idea of where the innovation will come from within that technology and who will it come from. That will then drive your buy or borrow strategy, right? If you are going to build, then you want to avoid all those issues that may come across in terms of freedom to operate, right? And then, of course, all of us get super excited by market potential, and hence, no surprises, all of us gave it one of the highest thumbs up, right, in terms of the poll we did. However, if you see, we have started giving you a range of market potential, because this is over 5 years. I now consider 5 years as long term. I used to consider 10 years as long term. 5 years is long term, 3 years is mid term, 1 year is near term. So if you look at the range also, right, the range is a lot more shorter for this technology because it's, of course, based on ample discussions that we have had internally as to how that could be. But the range is about 121 billion to 128 billion. Of course, it dwarfs in front of what Vanda presented, which was $400 billion. But you can start to see, right, how the opportunity assessment for different areas can really guide you in terms of how you want to look at, some of the areas you may want to go into or some of the areas you may want to completely avoid. On the ferrophosphate battery size, you can see case studies are clearly jumping out of China. Lithium energy storage got about $622 million in terms of their Series C funding. Also, you see innovations from Korea as well, right? Your LG Energy Solution, SK Innovation are also at the forefront. But not to say that Europe and North America are behind. I think there will be a bit of a shakeup in the battery side of things as we anticipate. But also the opportunities clearly with ferrophosphate batteries lie around its higher safety, cost, of course, long cycle life, which makes it attractive for your electric vehicles and consumer electronics and clearly energy storage, right? That our colleagues think it will revolutionize. So again, ferrophosphate batteries is one to look out for in terms of the battery chemistry. There are many other battery chemistries as well. But if you look at the way we process this entirely, right? So we have what, 480 technologies, 8 factors, each factor getting a score of between 1 to 10. So some of the battery chemistries then sort of fall below, right? Because there isn't enough funding or there's enough patent activity or potential around it as well. So hopefully this gives a flavor of what you can anticipate, right, as you go deeper into the top 50 system and the platform that we have as well. As you can imagine, with all things being a list, the question that we always get and we ourselves want to know is, how good or how amazingly well we are doing, right, in terms of our evaluations, or sometimes how do we miss the mark. But what also you get exposed to, right, in terms of the standard inputs that you get as part of the platform. So what you see over here are three elements that you get to sponge in and consume. So which go from, as we focused on the top 50 technologies itself, you get about 10 slides per technology. Again, depending on your taste, you can go into the technologies of interest. But the thing is, it's not just for 2025. You'll get access to everything in the past. So you can go back years and then say, hey, within the energy landscape, within health and wellness, within ICT, within medical device, within what is it that Frost & Sullivan has been saying and how those technologies are progressing. So that's what the top 50 output is. And then if you remember, we get asked, tell us what we don't know, right? So that's where the Future 18 technology comes in, which looks at long-term 8 to 10 year evolution of the technologies. And those are really at TRL1. Maximum TRL3 is what I consider. But since we love to push the boundaries, what we started seeing was that the interconnects of these technologies were actually giving rise to new products, new business models, and new solutions. So this is where we also provide convergence scenarios, which, if you ask me, my favorite frame of reference for 2025 is scenario analysis. That's another topic for another day. But convergences of how technologies could come together is also, you get as part of this overall experience. So something to think of, and again, how does it really look as a platform is on the next slide, wherein you start to see how we play with the data, or how you can play with the data, how you can compare completely different technologies. If you look at the top right-hand corner of the graph, right, you can look at technologies that you can focus on, right from your alternative proteins to green hydrogen to phygital packaging, and compare them on the 8 factors, or You want to look at the trend of how the technologies have evolved as far as our sort of, evolution of an area is concerned on the bottom left hand side rather, right, on the advanced manufacturing and automation perspective. So again, there's a lot to play and fiddle with, and that's where the potential lies. But here's the interesting thing. On the next slide, we thought of sharing with you what have we picked up. So one of my favorites is, and Sudeep loves this, is AI. But is AI artificial intelligence or artificial innocence? That's what I think of, right? Because we started looking at machine learning way back in 2016, right? But now, of course, it drives a lot of what we have in terms of our day-to-day thinking and approaches. So again, from the panel itself, Sudeep, any you wanted to highlight from your experience and you see in the industry from what we have shared?
Thanks, Ankit. And a couple of points that I want to respond to first. What you mentioned in terms of about the timeline for technology development, and you rightly said that in your view, 5 years is long term, 3 years is midterm, 1 year is near term. But I want to qualify that for our audience and say that look, it depends on which technology area you're in. If you're in an hyper competitive, rapidly evolving area like AI, that development cycle, 5 years, maybe a whole generation, right? But if you're in pharmaceutical development, some of the timescales there are longer, right?
Right.
If you're in aerospace, which is highly regulated, just like pharma is, your timescales for technology evolution might be smaller, but for product development, product release, and evolution are longer. So I think that we have to qualify that depending on which tech area you're coming from. Now, the other thing that I want to highlight is convergence. And I know we've not spoken much about that today, but that is another critical area. We're seeing a lot of talk about funding going out of universities. We're seeing a lot of talk about startups getting less and less money in a high interest rate environment. In such scenarios, or even otherwise, for the general celebrity and health of innovation, you have to look at how different technologies in different areas can combine together to create new innovation. And that's what we call connecting the dots. And this is what I always tell my students at Rutgers as well and elsewhere when I teach innovation strategy and management is connect the dots. But the first thing you need to do to connect the dots is to have enough dots in your pockets. So you got to collect the dots. And I hope that today, those of you in the audience that have tuned in live, as well as others that will be listening into this, in your cars or at leisure, hopefully you've collected enough dots that you will serendipitously connect at some opportune moment, in a flash of intellectual enlightenment, and give rise to ideas and innovations and solve problems that you're looking at very keenly. And that's our real hope.
Yeah, thanks, Sudeep. Vanda, any views from you on these?
Yeah, just continuing on what Sudeep just said in terms of connecting the dots and looking at new sort of scenarios, you really don't have to rely on serendipity anymore. We can do like a structured workshop around it if you're really interested. We've done that and we've been able to sort of create these billion-dollar idea workshops in the past, and they've sort of done really well. So we'd be happy to do that for you as well in case you're interested. You know who to contact. In terms of identifying new tech innovations much before they become disruptive. We've been able to do that for mRNA therapies in the past. Of course, one of, I think, Ankit's favorite example is AI chips. We identified the potential of NVIDIA and were told to invest in it, but we didn't. So, lesson learned. If you identify new technologies and new innovators that are worth $1 billion and $1 trillion in case of NVIDIA, please go ahead and invest in them because they'll give you great ROI in the future. Some of the other technologies that we've been able to identify and are not featured here in the list today is liquid biopsy as a tech platform. We were able to identify the potential when its real sort of current market potential was zero. Cut to today, it's like $1 billion market. We've been able to do that for graphene. We were able to talk to the innovator much before he became a Nobel laureate. So these are just some of the few examples where we've been able to successfully identify new technologies and innovators with $1 billion potential in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of lesson learned. So hence we are now more cognitive and cautious, right? With what colleagues tell us now. Benoit, your view on one of these or some of these?
Yeah, of course, these are all relevant examples. If I need to pick one, I would pick super engineered polymers for the broad range of application. One, technology development have led multiple application development in several industries. So for this is, I believe, worth it to definitely look at technology development and look at their potential application in future. So that's a great example to me.
Example as well. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's where things, of course, have evolved for us as well, right? And we have had some massive misses as well, but we'll probably do a separate webinar on the ones that we think we said will happen. For example, one I can point out already. When I joined in 2005, I thought hydrogen economy was going to be real by 2010. Fast forward to 15 years later, still not a reality, right? But that's what tells you, right? The technology potential is there, but sometimes the mega trends or the funding or the sort of, the factors behind the technology's growth never take place in that sense. On to the next slide. And I know we said we'll save 5 minutes of your time today. What are some of the real world problems, right, that we have been solving, leveraging the top 50 in itself? So one I can talk about right off the bat is the one wherein we did with a shipbuilding manufacturing organization, one of the largest on the planets. What they build are for making our Tuesday exciting yachts. They make super yachts. They make cruise ships, and they also make naval vessels. What they were interested in is to leverage the top 50 and the past work we had done to basically scan for which technologies will be leveraged in their future ship segments. And they again had a 5-year support from us in identifying different suppliers, different areas to work with and focus on, wherein we also unearthed things like, Wi-Fi is probably one of the most important technologies on a ship, or how do you reduce the emission from these ships, right? Because so I read some very interesting stats somewhere, which is all the cars on the planet on one side and then all the shipping containers on the other side, the amount of CO2 emission is almost equal. So if you solve the problem on the ship side, that's a significant impact on the planet and the ecosystem. But yeah, we have a few others which are interesting as well. Benoit has been on the FMCG side. So Benoit, any views on this?
Yeah, of course. Knowing the future is impossible, uh, but getting elements in order to foresee potential decision to be made out of predictable things is something worth it to look for. And wanted to mention this example about the chocolate producers, how to bring commodity into something else, matching consumer trends, matching future trends in general through analyzing these trends in particular, but also the different technologies that can enable such shift in for the future, to, yeah, as I was saying, bringing a product to something else thanks to technology. So that was worth it and will be worth it for organization, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, good example there. Sudeep, your view, your experience on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think too many to recount, but I want to share one about material informatics, which was really exciting to me. It's not on the list here since we do work across the globe in so many, but talking about how to connect the dots. So this was a material science player that wanted to innovate into creating new kinds of materials with unique properties. and they looked towards artificial intelligence to do that. Now you can actually do process design, you can do chemistry design, and explore the chemical space of existing, but more importantly, futuristic materials with properties that you desire and CTQs, or critical to quality attributes, that you desire or that your customers desire, and are able to engineer into that space, which is really, really large in terms of the combinatorial space that you can get to. And then you can come back and then you can look at robotics and automation, and you can then synthesize that, test it, and develop at scale. I think all of this, both the ethereal world, what we do computationally, um, and the material world, are now exceedingly very well connected. And those possibilities have broken this barrier between what you can do with compute and what you can realize on ground. And for me, that is fascinating. And the rate at which you can explore and iteratively improve and do that to bring products and solutions for your customers is really exciting for me. So,
Yeah, that's where the change is also there, right? From a materials angle. Vanna, you had something before we get to questions?
Sure. I can talk about the fact that we focus on technology. It cuts across industries, right? So we're not looking at one industry vertical. We look at technology as a whole. And one of the technologies that we track very closely, and Sudeep has also worked on several projects in this area, is microbiome technologies. And that was one example where we've been able to sort of lead advisory projects across the FMCG sector, the personal care sector, the healthcare and pharma sector using that technology landscape, and also explore new product development opportunities within the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or the HVAC industry as well. And it was really interesting to see that how one technology can mean different things to different industries in terms of the product and service offerings. And we are able to cover that breadth and then provide the depth of information that is needed both from a tech perspective as well as new innovation perspective.
So yeah, I think in that sense, as we go to the next slide, we'll quickly share with you how we can help your growth journey through what we have is the growth pipeline engine that you see right at the middle of the chart. Um, Today we focused on opportunity universe, which is where we tried and give you a view on what are the different opportunities that you can go deeper into from a technology perspective. And then as you can see across the wheelhouse itself, right? To go from opportunity universe to evaluation to GTM to planning and monitoring is all within our scope and focus as well. Yeah, that certainly is something that we can assist you with. So please let us know, reach out to one of us, and we'll be more than happy to do that. There is one more input from LinkedIn Live. How do you define degree of disruptiveness for a tech? Oh, lovely. So there is a textbook answer to this and there is a practical answer to this. So the textbook answer is disruptive technologies don't displace existing technologies. They're so unique that they create a marketplace for themselves. The problem is in popular media and press, we use the word disruption too much. Words, by the way, these days have lost meaning, right? As we all know. But when it comes to disruptive tech, they are so unique that they create a new marketplace. So as part of our evaluation, right, one of the factors, and Vanna can elaborate on that, within disruptive tech, we have 3 levels, right, that we look at. So Vanna, maybe if you want to expand on that for 30 seconds.
Sure. So we look at tech disruptions in terms of the scale at which they're replacing existing technologies, whether it's a step change or if it's a game-changing technology. If it's something that's game-changing, then the previous iteration of the technology would be obsolete and will no longer be required in the next 3 to 4 years. However, if it's an incremental change, then you're looking at step change. Like one step at a time. But if it's like
Mm.
more of a gradual change, you will not even realize that over the course of time, the technology has evolved and turned into something else. But the change is gradual and slow. And the way we assess that is using our sort of team of subject matter experts who are able to
Mm-hmm.
understand how these technologies will evolve in the next, say, 3 to 4 years. Most of the AI techs that we have tend to be game changing because they make the previous version of the technology absolutely obsolete. But
Mm-hmm.
say in the chemicals industry or in the healthcare industry, you'll see more of a step change that's happening in terms of disruption. So that's how we
Mm-hmm.
evaluate.
Perfect. Lovely. Thanks for that, Vanda. I know we are right up the clock. So thank you all for your time. And as I said, most importantly, for your attention. We really appreciate that. And please reach out to us if there is anything. And here's wishing you a great Tuesday and a great week ahead. Thank you to all my esteemed colleagues and Julieta. Thank you all.